Welcome to Sound Bites, hosted by registered dietitian nutritionist Melissa Joy Dobbins.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sound Bites podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Joy Dobbins, a registered dietitian nutritionist. And on the show, we delve into the science, the psychology, and the strategies behind good food and nutrition. And today we're talking all things produce and plants, fruits and vegetables, of course. My guest today is the fabulous Wendy Reinhardt Kapsak. She is president and CEO of the Produce for Better Health Foundation. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Hey, Melissa, thank you so much. Always fun to talk to another registered dietitian and one who is also a very fabulous communicator. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're on the show. Now, I'm going to refer to Produce for Better Health as PBH from here on out. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's just a mouthful. Tell us about your role at PBH and also a little bit about your background. You know, what made you interested in food and nutrition, and maybe a little about your past career experience, and what led you to join the team at PBH?
So I'll start with PBH, or the Produce for Better Health Foundation. We are a 501c3, and so that means we're a charitable education organization. And really, we're the only national organization that is 100% dedicated every single day to helping Americans consume more fruits and vegetables. And what makes us unique is consuming fruits and vegetables in all forms. So that includes fresh, frozen, canned, dried, and 100% juice. And the organization has been around for about 25 years. And even though people may not know PBH, because as you said, it's a mouthful, many are familiar with previous campaigns from the organization. So an example might be 5-A-Day. 5-A-Day fruits and vegetables for better health. That was around when I was a kid. Then in 2007, they changed from 5-A-Day over to another consumer campaign called More Matters, meaning, gosh, people aren't even eating enough fruits and vegetables as it is. Let's help them just know that more is a good idea.
Excellent. Yeah, I was going to ask you, I was going to bring up the fruits and veggies More Matters and say, oh, can you tell me when that started? And then, 5-A-Day prior to that. And there's sort of been this evolution, and that's what we're talking about today because there's sort of a new campaign you have going here, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves yet. So go ahead and talk more about your background and how you came to join the team.
Yeah, I had always been a either collaborator or supporter of PBH throughout my career. So I actually started as an individual wanting to be a physician. And so I went all the way until you get ready to take the big test, the MCAT, to become a physician. And around that time, actually, my mom got cancer. And so I was around a lot of sickness. And at that point, I decided, you know what? I really want to be around well people, and I really want to promote overall wellness. So my whole life, I've been very much into physical fitness or exercise. And then at the very end there, right up until the end, I decided, you know what, I think I'll, instead of medicine, focus on exercise, science, and nutrition. And so I got both degrees, bachelor's and master's in those, and then became a registered dietitian. I went right from my dietetic internship. For those who are registered dietitians listening, you're familiar with that. And for those of you who are not, registered dietitians have to do something kind of like a residency for physicians. It's not quite as long. So right after my dietetic internship, I went to Washington. And truth be told, I actually went there for someone I was dating at the time. But it actually, even if the dating relationship didn't work out, it worked out for my career, because I got to work for an amazing organization called the International Food Information Council, or IFIC. And that organization did a lot of consumer research, which then was used to help facilitate greater communication and education around a variety of food and nutrition issues. And so I worked on childhood obesity, energy balance, a lot of food safety topics, including like foodborne illness and how to communicate better with consumers around those topics. And I even touched on agricultural biotechnology, or what some people refer to as GMO. And so that was an amazing experience with amazing leaders, and certainly in a great city. And I truly enjoyed it. In fact, I stayed in Washington more than a decade and met my husband there. And then we moved to St. Louis, Missouri. And this happened to be the city where a company called Monsanto also was headquartered. And they came calling. They were looking for a dietitian to help them communicate about food biotechnology, or GMOs. And that was a somewhat, maybe it even still is, a controversial issue. And I've never been one to shy away from controversy, or where there might need to be a change in approaches for communication, and learned a tremendous amount around our food system, lots of agricultural innovation, and believe that there was a lot of great work that was accomplished in connecting both the agricultural community to the broader food and nutrition community, and hopefully some better communications around those practices. In both of those roles, I worked with PBH as a collaborator at IFIC, but then as a supporter from Monsanto, being that Monsanto was the largest vegetable seed company in the world by sales, and they certainly supported the produce industry. A lot of that work, by the way, was traditional breeding practices.
Right.
Which is less controversial.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't realize that the bulk of, well, and you can say it better than I can, but Monsanto was not just GMO.
Totally. Or just broadly food biotechnology, regardless of the company, isn't even by itself how crops are necessarily bred for greater yield or disease resistance, etc. But the fruit and vegetables broadly, that they're not necessarily leveraging plant biotechnology to a significant degree. But what's amazing about that experience was I ended up being the global corporate engagement lead for the vegetable business, and really got to see not just fruit and vegetable agriculture up close and personal, but also global fruit and vegetable agriculture. And that made me fall in love with the industry. I mentioned that PBH was more than 25 years old, and after a very extensive and successful career, my predecessor at PBH, Elizabeth Pavanka, was ready to retire. And gosh, what dietitian wouldn't want to be promoting fruits and vegetables every single day? So I called her up and I said, hey, do you think that I might be worthy of being your successor at PBH? And she said, wow, this would be an amazing opportunity for you, absolutely, but also for our industry to have your breadth of experience. And so the rest is history. I became president and CEO of the Produce for Better Health Foundation, and it is a true pleasure to serve the broader industry, but also around, some of the best tasting and most helpful products on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've been there about 2 years, if I'm correct?
I just had my 2-year anniversary, and it has been a tremendous experience. I would say significantly fast-moving, fast-paced experience in the last 12 months, as we really rallied the industry to say, how can we ignite a new relationship with fruits and vegetables and help consumers think about maybe the health benefits, but more around maybe those immediate benefits that they're seeking from their food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I attended the PBH meeting last spring that was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and got to see you in action there. And I know that that was the first time I'd seen you in that role, but I knew you'd been there a little while. But yeah, definitely a lot going on and some really exciting stuff. And to your point, who doesn't want to promote fruits and vegetables? We know, everybody knows that we need more. So let's talk about how many people are not meeting their fruit and vegetable intake, and how much are we supposed to be getting every day, just kind of as a starting point. Because we all know that we're falling short and that we should do better, but any specifics you have on that, just kind of be a good starting point for us.
As you said, most people in the United States, probably the world, know that fruits and vegetables are great for them. They may not know all of the benefits, but there's this general overall sense that they are helpful for you, and that you might be able to, let's say, decrease your risk for heart disease or even cancer. 1 in 10 consumers are actually doing a great job of meeting baseline recommendations for fruits and vegetables, let's say 5 cups per day. But at the same time, there's a whole group of us that are what you might call fruits and veggie strugglers. And, when we looked, I'll just kind of take a step back and said, gosh, even as a dietitian, people are thinking, enough with this fruits and vegetables business. Like, let's talk about something else. It'd be super boring. But even when I walked into that interview and talking to really big, important companies who were interviewing potential candidates to lead this organization, like I said, I like to take some risk and never turn down a challenge. But I said, I really think this is an opportunity for you to change. And so if you're ready to change the way that you look at either this organization and how you communicate about the benefits of fruits and vegetables and how you engage with consumers and influencers, for example, I'm your girl. But if you don't want to change, I'm really not. And so are you ready? Because if you're ready and you say yes, then you got to be ready. And they were ready for a change. They really wanted to, most over the last decade, consumption has remained flat. That's despite seeing like all of the amazing cooking shows and the advent of the food. All of that has done a lot for food and entertainment, and maybe even sparking people's interest in wanting to try something. But to make wholesale changes, that's going to take a much bigger effort. And so in coming on to PBH, the industry was ready for change. And for anybody out there in food or not, it takes a while to learn a new industry. And in many respects, I felt, gosh, I'm walking into their world. I've already told them that they need to change. I should probably learn a little bit more about where they're at too. So I spent about 6 months really digging in and talking to people about what I thought the organization and what we could do to help fruit and vegetable consumption. And they all kind of agreed. And then you need to start kind of selling in your ideas. And I also knew that it would take an investment. And it would take a pretty significant investment to essentially wholesale change the organization from the inside out. And I'm a big fan of $1 million plans. And so really, I've done that at every job. I said, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to spend at least $1 million. And I haven't been turned down yet. So that's what we did. And, it's kind of like anything in life. Sometimes you get to a place and you say, if I do nothing different, but even if I do nothing will change. And so I'm going to either have to invest time, money, or just some sweat equity into changing either my individual life or my future trajectory or that of my family, and in this case, the organization. And so we really kind of put, as an industry, all hands in and said, okay, by the way, for the next 12 months, we're going to go gangbusters, and we're really going to look hard at what consumers tell us they want, what we think we want as an industry. And we're also going to engage with influencers really differently and ask them what they want. And so the last 12 months, we're really focused in doing a lot of research. And this included research with consumers, research with the influencers that can affect consumers' food decisions, as well as the industry who's making the products. But that was not going to be enough either, because we realized that people weren't changing behavior. So we also engaged a behavioral scientist, Dr. Jason Reese. And so he comes from Harvard and then Pennsylvania. And he really then overlaid a whole level of behavioral science on top of all that other research we were talking about, really digging into the literature and looking at hundreds of behavioral science studies and saying, okay, if we understand this type of science, how then could we apply that? And this was fascinating because we started doing some of this work in 2017, and this was work that we were seeing in other countries. And really what was interesting was, instead of just asking consumers, why are you not eating this? And what are your barriers? And what would motivate you? It was really trying to tap into the immediate benefits of fruits and vegetables grounded in emotional well-being and feelings. So what we did was we looked at what had been done in some other countries and applied it to our own research beginning in 2017. And what we found was this. Consumers who are eating fruits and vegetables most days per week, let's say 6 to 7 days a week, and within those days eating fruits and vegetables at most meals and snacks, let's say, there was a positive correlation that with increased consumption, people were also at a higher level reporting a greater overall sense of life satisfaction and happiness. And so that, for the first time, made the produce industry say, you know what? We don't have to talk about long-term health benefits always. We can actually talk about the immediate emotional connectivity around our food with these products that are super healthful. It's like a food marketer's dream. So that's where we said, let's start to change how we communicate. Let's overlay all of this with behavioral scientists, our science, and let's now look at consumers even differently. Let's try to get at the root cause of why consumers may not be making some changes. So then we embarked on that big consumer research project, and what we came up with was a behavioral framework. And it was know, meaning K-N-O-W, feel, and emotions, and do, or act. And what we realized is that a lot of the previous campaigns, and even some of the existing ones, were all focused in the no category. And that is important, but it has much less impact if you look at the literature, that when we connect emotionally and or inspire and or make sure that action within this regard is about increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, we make action really easy for consumers to do. And so that really is what we are now basing our new movement on.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you touched on several things that I want to kind of take a deeper dive on. My next question was going to be like, why are we falling short? Why haven't we gotten this figured out yet? Maybe before, you were asking people, like you said, why aren't you eating enough fruits and vegetables? What are your barriers? But you took a deeper dive and are looking at the behaviors. And when I was at PBH meeting last year, that's when I met Dr. Jason Reese and saw him speak. And he's since been on the podcast. And we talk about critical thinking and behavior change. And I'm like his number one fan. And I've seen him at a couple of different conferences since then. Love the work he's doing. And I love this know, feel, do concept because we know, ironically, as dietitians and health professionals and even as consumers ourselves, that, knowledge is important and knowledge is quote unquote power. But if that's not translating to behavior change, we need to look at those missing pieces. So let's talk a little bit more about the consumer insights, because I love diving into consumer insights and what were people saying about their thoughts, their behaviors, what are they looking for? Tell us as much as you can about what you found with the consumer insights.
Sure. So I'll start, really there's kind of two phases of this. One was the initial work that I said was done. This was very traditional type of survey work done in 2017, looking at what had been done in some other countries. And so specifically now, what we found was consumers that ate fruit and vegetables at least, let's say, 6 to 7 days per week, they experienced at a much higher level this overall sense of life satisfaction. And so, to get really down to some of these numbers here, 76% of people who ate or eat fruits, let's say 6 to 7 days per week, they were also very satisfied with their life as a whole. That was compared to those that ate fruit less often. So there was like a 10% difference there. But I think the starker difference here is 76% of those eating most days per week said, hey, I am more satisfied with my life, compared to 33% of those who ate no fruit at all. So we see almost like this incremental effect, and a similar trend was also found for vegetables. When we got to happiness, again, we saw this kind of incremental increase, greater fruit and vegetables, days per week, for example, 6 to 7 days, 68% saying, gosh, I have been really experiencing greater levels of happiness in let's say the last 4 weeks than 33% of those who are eating no fruit at all. And we saw an incremental increase there from, let's say, 0 to 1 to 5 to 6 to 7 days per week. So there was almost like this cumulative effect that was happening in those areas. And so that was quite interesting. The next layer would be, and again, this is from that 2017 research, is we said, well, for those people who are eating fruits and vegetables 6 to 7 days a week, what are the benefits that they're experiencing here that might be contributing to this greater all life satisfaction or happiness? And what we found was it wasn't just one thing. It was a variety of things. So they kind of fell into the physical, emotional, and social benefits category. And the way we used to talk about fruits and vegetables was probably something like, just so you know, you're going to die of a horrible disease, and it's all your fault because you didn't eat fruits and vegetables. And so that is just not motivating. And that's not how people are, probably most of us actually, even the dietitians. If we think about our everyday life, we're thinking about what's right in front of us. And it can be so hard to think, okay, 20 years from now, how is this decision going to affect me? And that's what we found with these people that were being successful. So what can we learn from those successful fruit and veggie eaters that are really doing what most of us would aspire to do and eating 6 to 7 days per week? Well, they talk about pride in their choices, and they talk about feeling good in their every day-to-day activities. So some statements that they might agree with would be things like, I just feel good. I feel good about myself, meaning I have pride in myself because I feel like I've made some good choices. I'm confident that I'm getting the nutrition I need because I know they're already helpful. This might sound like, really? Yes, really. But it's not about feeling pride because 20 years from now, maybe something's not going to happen to you. It's about right now. Feeling good in our day-to-day activities, I'm agile, I'm active, my memory is sharp, I have more energy. And when I don't do this, I feel different. I really do hear that a lot for people who are regularly active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, I think everybody can relate to this. When you exercise or you're active, you feel good about it. And if you plan to and you didn't quite get there and you missed that day or whatever, you feel a little bit bad. So that may be more familiar than thinking about this with our food choices.
Right.
But I'm glad you're explaining some of the thought process here because, as you said, it's correlation. It's not, at least in this research, cause and effect. So then it begs the question, well, maybe happier people eat more fruits and vegetables. There's so many different factors that you could look at. But it makes a lot of sense making certain choices and feeling good about those choices.
Mm-hmm. I mean, people also talk about an emotional or social benefits associated with their consumption. These are those fruit and veggie success stories. And they talk about, I have a positive outlook on life. I enjoy eating fruits and vegetables, and I'm also eating them for environmental or ethical reasons. And so there's some diversity in, let's say, all of these responses. But to your point, correlation versus cause and effect, I don't know, are happy people just, they're happy, so they eat fruits and vegetables? Or when people eat fruits and vegetables, they get happier? I don't know. It's really kind of interesting. The research that this work that was done by PBH in 2017 was built on research that was done, I mentioned, in some other countries. And they found, very similar results. Our work was patterned to some degree off of theirs. But the disparity between, let's say, those that were experiencing a greater sense of overall life satisfaction and those who were not, meaning those who weren't eating the fruits and vegetables, the disparity was likened by other, let's say, quotients or measurements of happiness or life satisfaction. And this was correlated, something that's often used in that literature is having a job or being employed and being unemployed. So for anyone who has gone through a job loss or has to swiftly kind of recalibrate and now is in a position to go get a job, that can be very devastating, and it can also be very make you feel kind of lonely inside, make you kind of feel unsure about yourself. And so, gosh, if fruit and vegetable consumption could feel like the difference between being unemployed and being employed and having security and having an outlook on life that allows you to feel a greater sense of control over your future, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how could we capitalize on that? That was in 17. So now we're in 18, and now we launched, for example, in 19. So we wanted to do a lot of research, right, to inform this new call to action. And so I mentioned, we did a lot of industry interviews because we weren't just asking about what they wanted for themselves, but also what they wanted for their businesses and the viability of their businesses to make a difference on public health, but also the bottom line. I mean, that's what business is. So, we wanted to understand they had birthed essentially this organization and had, nurtured it for 25 years. What were their hopes and dreams for the future? We also, I mentioned, talked to influencers. And these were fitness influencers as well as food and nutrition or lifestyle influencers. And they were saying, you know what? I know, by the way, a lot of these facts and figures, but how do I inspire consumers in a different way, in something that really gets them to feel emotion? So they were looking for tools and resources. And of course, they wanted it to be science-based. And so that's when we turned to not only the food and nutrition science that informs all of the work we do at PBH, but also that behavioral science. You mentioned Dr. Reese. I would encourage folks, if you haven't listened to his work on critical thinking, to absolutely, review that episode from Melissa's podcast. He's fabulous. But then, if we kept also too, what about consumers? And so we looked at different types of research. PBH had always done an annual consumer survey type of research, but we wanted to employ some different approaches here because we were trying to have different outcomes. So we did some food journey work, which is people send you in food diaries of they're over video, and they talk to you about, well, why did they make that decision and what's causing them to put their food together in a certain way? Why are they, for example, packing fruits and vegetables for their kids, but not for themselves and picking up some other kind of convenience item? So this was essentially nearly 450 individual eating occasions that we were now saying, what was the thought process? What was the execution, and what was essentially the outcome of that eating occasion, and had these folks journal that for us and send us these video diaries.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. Then we employ, what's really in the life of kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then we also used artificial intelligence to do social listening research of 1.2 million social posts around fruit and vegetables. And this was looking at the posts among what you might consider or self-reported fruit and veggie success stories, like we've been talking about, those that are consuming almost daily fruits and vegetables, and then also what you might consider strugglers, and those that aspire, their consumption is somewhat moderate, and they're aspiring to be like a success story person. And then we have these other people that they might have, we call them the condiment people. They're cool, lettuce and tomato on my burger. That's awesome. And you know what? They're actually right about that. Mm-hmm. And that's probably another podcast. But they were more like fruits and vegetables as a condiment. The other people the moderates might be considered fruit and vegetables as a side dish, still thinking about fruits and vegetables as a portion of the plate versus integral into the meal and or just a mainstay. And so our success story folks, these people are crave experimentation every moment. And they are actively communicating about this on social media. And what's really amazing is that the current of advocacy among particularly the moderates, the side dishers, if you will, and the success stories is tremendous. And it's not finger wagging in the least. It's super encouraging.
What does it look like? Talk to me about that advocacy.
Like an example, for some of the dietitians out there, this might seem very typical, but for those that are struggling and looking for assistance, this is just an aha moment. Mm-hmm. So an example might be a success story person or somebody who's a frequent fruit and vegetable consumer. They have a real interest in just sharing their experiences and their successes. So a case in point might be something that you're seeing more and more of. So zoodle, so zucchini, kind of
spiralized, sort of.
Yeah, to look like noodles. They're saying, oh my gosh, zoodles are a great way to imitate pasta without the carbs. Okay, take away what you might think about different types of diets out there, but they're saying they're giving what it is, they're showing it in a real easy way, and then they're giving a reason why. Okay, and so then the frequent user is essentially giving a new idea to somebody that might be a more moderate or infrequent consumer.
I see.
That aspires to do more. So they say, gosh, okay, cool. Never thought of that. I only eat zucchini grilled in the summer. So now we're saying we only have it one way. We only have it during one season, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I cook it so it tastes good like that? And so this is now just very basic for maybe some of our health professionals out there, but it's really an aha moment. And now there's this greater sense of community that's happening with these strugglers and the success stories.
That's excellent.
So we wanted to capitalize on that. There's some other really interesting need states as well, that fruits and vegetables are like really different. And so that was super fascinating as well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit, or have you talk about that a little bit, because I never heard it put this way, but it makes sense. And so I'd like you to kind of give an example or delve a little bit about how fruits and vegetables are viewed differently and serve different needs for people.
Yeah, I mean, this was, again, it was like, oh yeah, of course. But consumers are like really telling us. So particularly for us registered dietitians or those that are communicating even, let's say, in the lifestyle space, fruits and vegetables, it's kind of like you don't talk about one without talking about the other, very nonchalant, in a sentence. You might use the word produce. Consumers don't really use that word. Even when they're shopping, they don't go to the produce department.
Yeah.
They're shopping maybe for a fruit or a vegetable, or they're shopping for a meal, and so they're really shopping for an ingredient to put in a meal. And that was part of that food journey work. But then I think what we really started to see was, and if I go back now to the knowledge or knowing, feeling, and doing, if we start to focus more on feeling and doing, because through the behavioral literature, that's where we're going to have the greatest impact, now we can apply that, let's say, to communications or our own thoughts around fruits and vegetables and come up with some really great solutions that might actually lead to doing. So a case in point might be fruits in particular. They're often, the feeling or the initial emotion that they're most connected to would be happiness, sweet, joy would be an example. And maybe folks feel like it is an indulgence. That doesn't mean, by the way, they don't have barriers. For example, unfortunately, a lot of folks are like, oh man, it's super high in sugar, so I got to watch that. That's an unfortunate thing, but it is how people might view a potential barrier to consuming fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So the solution in this regard is to consider, okay, how do we meet consumers where they are and how they view the current need state? I want indulgence. I view this as sweet and joy. So now I'm going to create fruit as a happy solution to a sweet craving. And an example might be, actually previous generations used to consume fruit for dessert.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. We don't really do a lot of that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of a comeback there in some food service establishments. In the area of doing for fruits, they often are an impulse or a craving. They're often seen as just for breakfast or a snack on the go if it's like an apple or a mandarin. But there's an opportunity in this instance. We can roll with what consumers are already thinking and feeling about fruit, but we also can disrupt that by saying, okay, let's reposition fruit as the last step of every meal. So now we're going to make fruit plus protein type of mini meals. And so we're not going to look at it only as a standalone snack, but we're going to try to compete with other convenience items and now partner or pair the fruits and vegetables together, or the fruit and a protein together. And you see some of that taking place, for example, in the marketplace. You might have a protein pack that might have apple slices plus some cheese, or apple slices and almonds is one that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. So there are some companies that are capitalizing on this. I would say for vegetables, one thing vegetables are not is joyful. And so consumers aren't thinking like, yes, kale, it's so joyful. But what people might be thinking is, what about pride or smart? So if fruit is very happy and joyful, vegetables are really viewed as an example of smart and pride. And that also takes place because there's probably for them been an element of planning. Fruit doesn't take a lot of planning. in many regards, but there's this notion and really some reality to it that there has to be some prep involved with vegetables. Now, if people think about what vegetables might have been like, for example, we can use the Brussels sprouts example, boiled to like a heaping,
mush,
slimy mush, right, is now to roasted, caramelized perfection. That's different. So there's a little bit of difference between fruits and vegetables for sure. And so for anyone who's thinking about either communicating to, let's say, a client or patient, or even just to your family, how you talk about this is really important. And so you have an opportunity to take a step back and not just like fruits and vegetables and fruit, like just
lumping it all together.
Yeah.
They have different personalities.
Yes. So if they were walking down the runway, what would they be doing?
What would they be wearing?
Yeah, what would they be wearing? And so I think there's a great opportunity for any communicator, even when you're communicating with kids or your family, is to think about the different need states and reinforce the initial emotion that comes from that need state. And then also the concept of, and this is grounded in behavioral literature too, is cultivating enjoyment. And emotion, it's almost like lust a little bit. Lust is initial, but cultivating true relationship takes time and effort. Both steps in a relationship are connected to emotion, and they're connected emotionally, but they are a little bit different too. Both lead to doing something sometimes. So if we were going to fall in love, lust might come first. Cultivating a true sense of relationship comes over time.
Yeah. And this whole idea, like I said, is making me think of fruits and vegetables with different personalities and how we feel about them. And those need states reminds me of a recent episode I did on snacking, where there were these 3 reasons that we snack, and one is for nourishment and one is for optimization. And I forget the third one. You'll have to listen to the episode to find out, but it has to do with different times of day and different, are you fueling up for an exercise, or you hitting that afternoon slump, or are you trying to boost your fruit and vegetable? Now, I'm never going to say them together again. You're trying to boost your produce intake, as, again, consumers don't use that word, but yeah, what is your goal and what are you choosing to meet those different needs? So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But it reminds me of that. I love getting into the psychology behind our behaviors. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. So I think what you see with us is, if you think about previous campaigns around fruits and vegetables, 5 a day, more matters, half your plate. There is a place for what you might call more knowledge or fact-based campaigns, and or even just facts about fruits and vegetables as part of what people might read in a magazine. But it's not necessarily what might have the greatest impact. And so our goal with any campaign going forward was it didn't just hit, let's say, the knowledge box, but it also checked off in the other 2 boxes, which was feeling and doing. Whatever we would adopt going forward, does it hit at least 1? Does it hit 2, particularly feel and do? And if it hits all 3, that's a winner.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I want you to tell us about this new campaign. It's got a title and a phrase and all kinds of good stuff with it. Now, we are all familiar with the plant-based, plant-forward vibe going on. And so fruits, and vegetables, they're plants. So talk to me about, we're kind of leading the discussion up to this exciting announcement of your new campaign.
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing that up. So really, I'm glad you mentioned the plant-based or plant-forward movement. I would say the broader fruit and vegetable industry is so proud, by the way. The people who grow it, they're so proud of their products and how healthful they are. And they love when people talk about them, but they're kind of like, well, wait a second, everybody's talking about us, but are we really there? Are we part of that dialogue? And I strongly encourage them, particularly given previous experience, to say, I think there's something really important about that, is you're right. The plant-forward dietary patterns, as in grounded or rooted in science, absolutely includes fruits and vegetables. Today, a lot of that discussion doesn't really focus on fruits and vegetables. It's kind of like when people were saying them together, fruits and vegetables. It's like, okay, what is the plant-forward movement? It's like all these other things and fruits and vegetables. So we did feel that there was a great opportunity to kind of take a hold of at least produce's place on the plate in that movement, because it truly is a significant part of the plant-forward discussion. So that was always in the back of our minds, and there's a great interest of the produce industry being more conversant with the broader food dialogue. And so we kept that in mind, but we wanted to make sure, right, that we were hitting know, do, and feel. And so we looked at all of that research, the stuff from 2017 about happiness and overall life satisfaction, and then all those food diaries and the way the next generation, particularly of consumers, is communicating online and in their digital and social channels, all of that artificial intelligence, social listening type of research, and what influencers were winning. So what we did was we came up with, given those findings, a number of different taglines. And I like to tell you about the one that we landed on, and also a little bit of the struggles with the one we landed on. If you're going to research it, you got to be ready to see what the research says. So we did two of them, actually, and they both performed better. In the end, our two finalists performed better than the More Matters campaign. So we knew we were on to something, right? And so the one we settled on was called, or is called, Have a Plant. And it also includes, we can send you the logo, Melissa, and you can put it up so people can kind of see it potentially. But it also includes a link to our website, fruitsandveggies.org. And what we found, or what the research showed with these millennials and Gen Zs, which collectively, by the way, make up the largest demographic group in U.S. history, is it checked all the boxes. It reinforced what we already know about fruits and vegetables. They're healthy for you. Good, ding. Then, the next category around emotion or feeling, it checked those boxes. And it checked this makes me feel really good and positive about a choice I'm about to make, but it also makes me think about why I'm making that choice and what I feel about plants. And that was really interesting. And so the idea that this type of emotion could lead to a movement, and the fact that people had to stop for a second and think, and were happy to do so, was quite interesting. And then in the do category, it did remind and encourage, for example, choice or purchase of fruits and vegetables. And then because this was geared towards millennials and Gen Zs, it did also elicit a innate desire to share the concept going forward, to wear it on a t-shirt or on a hat, or to share it in digital or social media. And so for an organization like us, that's focused on broad-based education and communication, that would be something that we would be interested in as well. Now, we also tested one that was much more oriented around feeling. And I actually thought that one would win, essentially, in the end. And I liked it, and a lot more of what I would call my seasoned colleagues also liked it. And that was something called Pick Me Up. And it had a double entendre. It meant, literally, will you please pick me up? Again, those fruits and vegetables with you. It was like, pick me, I love you. I can make you happy. And then it also had that concept in there around happiness and this idea of a pick me up. Well, a lot of people really liked that one too. And again, it tested better, right? It checked a lot of the same boxes. It didn't check the same boxes to the same degree. So it wasn't as strong as the other Have a Plant. Mm-hmm. And so in addition, it didn't translate into Spanish very well, meaning we lost the double entendre. And then, like I said, I've worked on some pretty controversial issues. I thought, oh my gosh, imagine the social memes of Pick Me Up with fruits and vegetables and all the things people like to make with food art. And I thought, oh no, that could be challenging to control. Mm-hmm. So, there were reasons why we loved it, and there were reasons why in the end we went with Have a Plant. But here's the discussions. And so to take you kind of inside the room, right? That when we were discussing those findings and we saw, gosh, Have a Plan is just testing. It's just stronger. Both are good. This one's stronger. We had to do a couple things. One is we said, this isn't about us, meaning it's not about me.
Right.
And so a lot of us that are talking to anyone, whether it's your family members around the dinner table or whether it's like a client, if you're helping them kind of achieve some type of health and wellness objective, a lot of times, you know what? It really isn't about us. It's about them and what's going to kind of spur or inspire them to achieve something greater than they are right now. I would say the other part of this was, again, the produce, broader fruit and vegetable industry saying, you know what? We're a part of that plant forward movement. And in fact, we're a pretty significant part.
Yeah.
And in fact, out of all the plants that people should be consuming more of, we're like the ones that they're consuming the least of. So maybe there's an opportunity here to raise our sales, and given that they typically don't have the same marketing dollars as some others, is to capitalize on consumers' interest in adding more plants to their diet. And in doing so, helping everyone recognize that fruits and vegetables are the plants we should be consuming more of, really, really. And there's an amazing way to make them more of the everyday and enjoying them. And so in the end, with all of that to consider, our broader membership, not just Wendy or not Melissa, or, they chose to listen to this next generation of consumers and move forward with the one that consumers felt the strongest about and capitalize on the plant forward movement. And essentially in doing so, stake a claim in what they really are a significant part of. And that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the insight. I feel like, in the room where it happens, that's fascinating. And it makes a lot of sense as you explain that story. And yeah, to leverage and take ownership of that plant forward movement. Absolutely. You had mentioned this earlier on, and this is an aspect that I love about PBH. They are encouraging all forms of fruits and vegetables. So I wanted to ask you to maybe share some specific ways that PBH and Have a Plant are incorporating that into the conversation about all forms.
Yeah, I think it does make PBH unique. What we found in the research is that all of the forms, consumers eat them all. So even if there's, you're seeing a lot out there about, let's say, one form over another, good, bad, or indifferent, is that most consumers have a pretty busy life and they're leveraging essentially all of the forms at some point in time. A lot of this is oriented around our fast-paced, convenient lifestyles. And so we believe that there's a place within the plate, if you will, for all of these forms. Certainly it's grounded in food and nutrition science, but it's also just rooted in the way people live their lives. So there's lots of different ways to incorporate them. And on our website, fruitsandveggies.org, there's a lot of simple, easy ways to incorporate all forms and a lot of fantastic ideas that go along with what you would say is really not that prescriptive 5 a day or more matters or half your plate, but really an invitation to have a plant. And so it's like, have a seat. Come on in, have a seat. Here's some really easy ways for you to enjoy fruits and vegetables. By the way, all of these can fit into your life because you're super busy. And so some of them lend themselves to greater convenience and hopefully greater consumption. A case in point might be particularly like with those veggies, right? People said, well, gosh, I have to be smart and I have to plan for them. I might even have to prep them. Well, sometimes those canned fruits and veggies, they take a little bit of that prep out, particularly, let's say, if we're going to be making some type of stew, chili. Some people like something called cowboy caviar. We just had Cinco de Mayo here where we kind of can create a bean corn salsa pretty easily. So there's some really fun things that you can do with all of these forms. But again, I'm focused mostly, though, on enjoyment and making sure that regardless of the form, the need state is being met. If that's convenience, awesome. If it's the crunchiness of a fresh fruit and vegetable, let's say fresh carrots, for example, if it's gosh, I have 5 minutes to get dinner on the table and I'm looking for a better way to steam my vegetables. Well, there's some frozen broccoli florets, amazing bag technology that can be done fairly well, right? In 5 to 3 minutes, and you didn't even have to clean a pot for that one. So juice can be a really great and refreshing beverage. So I think I'm more oriented around the feeling and making sure that we're meeting the need state, and at the same time making sure people know, gosh, you have a lot of choices and they all can be pretty amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, so you mentioned the website, fruitsandveggies.org. There's more than 450 recipes there. There's videos, I believe, expert advice. There's ways to join the movement and get involved. There's also social media. So Wendy, where can we find you guys on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on?
Absolutely. We want you to join the Have a Plant movement. So go to the website, fruitsandveggies.org. Pretty simple, fruitsandveggies.org. And you're going to find a ton of simple solutions. You're going to find recipes. You're going to find series of, let's say, the best brunch ideas incorporating fruits and vegetables, or the best smoothie bowls. You're also going to find a lot of information like, oh my gosh, how do I even pick a cantaloupe? Do I have to smell it? Do I knock on it? What do I do? And so you can find information in the fruits and veggies section, kind of like a 101 for you. And then, a lot of people, like we said, are inspired by what they see online. And so, our Instagram handle, if you're looking for some pretty food, in this case, fruits and vegetables and fruit and vegetable plants, that would be at Fruits and Veggies. Same thing for Facebook. And then for Twitter, at fruits_veggies. We also are on LinkedIn too. So would love to hear from folks and your ideas for the movement, the Have a Plant movement. Love your ideas on our reactions, right, on the movement itself. And we do have T-shirts. And so if you go on our page, any of our social pages, you will see people wearing the T-shirts, Have a Plant. And I am getting so many requests for these. We're going to have to mass produce them. But there is something to this, right? And people are enjoying the T-shirts. They're enjoying what they see online and engaging with us. And so we're super open to hearing more from all of you about this new movement, and hope you join.
Yeah, there really is a sharing component, and you've really brought that to life today, so thank you. And Wendy, you also have formed this elite network of influencers. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. PBH is an influencer essentially in our own right. So collectively, we're reaching more than 1 million consumers every single day with our messages. And that's through our digital and social channels. Obviously, we can't reach everyone, so we're hoping that more and more people join our Have a Plant movement. But we did ask several what you might consider food, fitness, and lifestyle influencers to join our movement and essentially be almost like brand ambassadors for our Have a Plant movement. And so we're calling them our fruit and vegetable ambassadors in action. Anyone can be an ambassador, but they're really taking a step out and donating, if you will, really in kind, their time, their expertise and content, and have made a commitment to deliver PBH content and inspiring through that content fruit and vegetable consumption among their communities and certainly our consumers. And they're going to do that on a monthly basis, donate their time on a monthly basis for free. And that is very admirable in this day of influencers and those influencers working with brands. But they're believers in the Have a Plant movement. And because we're a mission-driven education organization, they really felt like this was something they wanted to be a part of. So they're on our website too, fruitsandveggies.org, and you can get a sneak peek at all of them, follow them, and certainly follow us on our digital and social channels at Fruits and Veggies. And we just love that because with these ambassadors and then with PBH's own digital and social following, now we're reaching not just 1 million consumers, but 2 million consumers on a regular basis, daily basis with our digital and social content. So this is our way of saying it's not just going to take one organization to change fruit and vegetable consumption, but it's going to take all of us. And it's going to take all of us pouring into our own communities, whether they're a digital or social community or right even in our houses. it's going to take all of us. This is a big one to change fruit and vegetable consumption. So we're thrilled with the ambassadors, but we're also thrilled with anyone who wants to be a part of this movement.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, anyone can join the conversation, and there's a way to do that by visiting fruitsandveggies.org. In wrapping up, you've shared some really specific ideas and examples, but I thought I would ask you, as part of my Do More with Dinner project, produce has obviously been an important part of that. Just trying to get more fruits and vegetables in, as well as decreasing food waste from produce by meal planning around the fresh items that I have that need to be eaten, and relying on my pantry and freezer for those frozen and canned items. And my son loves prunes, dried plums, prunes, whatever you want to call them. You got a little bit of juice here and there. So, that has been a really strong component to my Do More with Dinner project. So I thought I would ask you, what are some of maybe the best tips that you've heard or tried to increase fruit and vegetable intake? Or tell me something about how you do more with dinner that I assume might involve produce to some extent. But I know you've already shared some really great ideas, but I wanted to kind of give you another opportunity in wrapping up.
Well, first of all, I just love your Do More with Dinner initiative. I think it's brilliant. And we did a partnership project with an organization called the Food Marketing Institute. It represents food retail, and they have a family meals campaign. It happens to be during the same month that we're promoting fruits and veggies.
September, right?
Yes.
My birthday month.
Oh, good. Your birthday, even better. So they went so well together because there are so many, we can call it dinner, we could call it any meal, right?
Right.
But dinner is one where most people are kind of at least coming together after a busy day. There are so many benefits to eating a healthy, meal, but there's also a lot of benefits for connectivity at dinner or through family meals.
Yes.
And we just spent a lot of time talking about people's emotional connections to their food, but also people's emotional connections to each other. And so I think this initiative is brilliant because it can capitalize on both those things, right? And so I would say there's a lot of great ideas on fruitsandveggies.org, a lot of great recipe ideas for mealtime, but this is one of the perfect opportunities to add more plants to your plate. And those are the fruits and veggie plants, the original plants that we're not eating enough of. And your ability to connect with those around you and inspire them with what's being served, and or let's say it's children, encouraging them, congratulating them, and having real positive experience around fruits and vegetables versus like, if you don't eat this, you're not getting anything else. That's a less than positive experience. So there's so much that we could be doing with the Do More with Dinner initiative, but you're already, by being together, being more. If you add a few more plants, well, gosh, I hope that really would contribute to the family and or whoever you call your family leading a happier, healthier life because you're enjoying more, in this case, fruits and vegetables together.
Yeah, I love the Family Meals Month. And of course, with my Do More with Dinner, it's family meals every month.
Right.
But to that point, it doesn't have to be dinner. It can be breakfast. And that's something else that we talked about in the snacking episode about snacking's impact on dinner and meal times and how that is evolving. So that was a really interesting conversation with a behavior scientist as well. So I encourage people to check that out. But I'm starting to share more specific Do More with Dinner tips and ideas regularly on my show. And so I wanted to share something that I'm doing with my Have a Plant initiative, if you will, with my Have a Plant activities, I guess. One thing that we're doing a lot more is we love canned black beans. So we're taking those and mixing them with rice, whether it's, like an Uncle Ben's rice packet or a Seeds of Change sort of rice packet at dinner. And, we've been roasting veggies for a while. And last night I had some leftover green beans and I was roasting some broccoli, which I do a lot. But I'm like, if I don't make these green beans, then they're going to go bad. And so I want to use them up. Mm-hmm. My initial instinct was to steam them on the stovetop, but I thought, why not just throw them in with the broccoli? So I roasted green beans, which would never have been something that I would have thought to do. So I'm so proud of myself for experimenting.
I'm proud of you.
They turned out great.
But you know what? You felt good about it. You know what?
Yep.
And whether it turned out amazing, it did. So that's super cool. But you know what? You were still doing it. And that could have been a great story no matter what happened, by the way. And so, no, I applaud your efforts. You know, I think even people always laugh when I tell them this. I try not to use a lot of plates. So sometimes what we'll do is, and you can do this in the summer months, like super easy, but you also can do it indoors during the winter months, is we really like picnics. And who doesn't like particularly kids? I used to do this a lot when the kids were small, is let's just put a blanket on the floor. Let's have just basically quick, fresh cut type of fruits and vegetables. Let's have some cheese. Let's have some whole grain crackers. Let's have fun. And let's pretend that we're somewhere else, So that's some things that we used to do. And by the way, I think that took about, 10 minutes to put together. And then at the end, I had a couple maybe paper plates. You can recycle those. And then you just take out that blanket and you just shake it out outside. And then you're done.
That's fun. Yeah, that sounds like my kind of meal prep right there. Absolutely. Well, and while we're on the subject of family dinner, I just saw today and was going to share it out in some of my podcast announcements, is that one of the resources in my Do More with Dinner resource kit, which is a free downloadable, people can go to soundbitesrd.com and download that. But one of the resources in there is the Family Dinner Project. And they have recently done a makeover on their website, and they have a lot of great information. So I encourage people to check that out as well. And they have 3 components. They also talk a lot about the conversation and the connecting. So I think it's really exciting to see how fruits, vegetables, produce are connecting people and getting that conversation going. That sharing aspect is really cool.
Absolutely. And I think just tapping into the right here and now, I think
being present.
Yes. I think it's clear. People are craving that, whether that's with each other or with your food. So I think, your project and these others that are focused on connecting through food at dinner, there's a lot to that. And I think it's great.
Makes us happier. So that's for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Wendy, and sharing the Have a Plant initiative with us and all of the insights on the journey and the process. I really am excited for you and excited to share this out with my listeners, and hope to get to see you sometime soon.
That would be great. Thanks so much for having us on, and we're just really grateful and hope to see you again soon.
All right. Thank you. And for everybody listening, as always, enjoy your food with health in mind, and hashtag have a plant. Till next time.
For more information, visit soundbitesrd.com. Music by Dave Burke.